Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
but a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly,
he's our
dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, let me wish everyone a great and wonderful Sunday afternoon. I'm so delighted to be with you again for another conversation with one of our distinguished Episcopal leaders. And I thank you all for tuning in and for sharing each Sunday with me and with these wonderful bishops as we spend some intimate time with them as they take us back on their particular journey that has brought them thus far along the way. And so I would ask that you would take a moment, if you would, to host a watch party. And those of you who have phones, you already know how to do it. Hit the share button. It'll say host a watch party, and you hit yes, and other people will see it. Share it to other CME pages as well. As always, I like to begin with special thanks and acknowledgement to Senior Bishop Lawrence Reddick and Mrs. Wendy Jones Reddick, the College of Bishops and their spouses, Bishop Walker, Bishop Brown, and Dr. Teresa Duhard for their tremendous support in allowing me to have this platform to reach you all across the country and all across the world. And very special thanks to Reverend Mike Myers for his assistance with my graphics. Before we get to Bishop Williams, and we're going to get to him in just a quick second, I want you to know that on this coming Tuesday, it will be my honor to have a conversation with the family of the 49th Bishop of our church, Bishop Charles Lee Helton. I am so looking forward to talking to the Helton family and appreciate their wanting to share in a conversation with Bishop Helton. So that will take place on this coming Tuesday. I will announce this week our schedule for next Sunday. We were scheduled to have Bishop Umorte, but of course, you know, his brother passed. And so we had to make some other arrangements. But I'll let you know what bishop will be sitting in the wonderful chair to share with us on next Sunday. Let me share just a small clip as I prepare to bring up our bishop for today.
If you're going to be about ministry, you ought not be ashamed or afraid to tell somebody, I believe in God the Father Almighty. Tell somebody he's the maker of heaven and earth.
Tell somebody that he is the maker of heaven and earth. It is my joy and my delight to present to you, my brothers and my sisters across our great Zion, the 58th Bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, Bishop Sylvester Williams Sr. And I got to say, Bishop, you are wearing that dashiki this afternoon.
Oh, man, make my day. Greetings to you. I was thinking that I wanted to be like the great Dr. Skip Mason. I know that I've watched you on numerous occasions and you had your dashiki on. I say I want to be just like him.
well, Bishop, I'm honored. I want to be like you. I tell you, I have admired you from afar. You are just a tremendous presence in our church. And I have been waiting for this opportunity, like I have for all of the other bishops, to share with you. And let me acknowledge all of them, because bishops are watching, and some of them are watching through Facebook and other platforms. So I'm not able to see the post or message when they let me know that they're watching. I was in contact with Bishop Lakey this week. And Bishop said, I've been watching every episode, but I don't know how to let folks know I'm watching. So to all of the College of Bishops, I greet you. And certainly as I see you, I'll let Bishop Williams know that you are indeed watching. But Bishop, you come from Hale County, Alabama, as I've had to do with some of the other bishops where I've not been familiar with. Tell us about Hale County. Tell us about your. So I had to do a map so I could see, do I recognize any of the other places? And of course, I see Tuscaloosa there. So you grew up in Hale. Tell us about this young man right here growing up in that county.
All right. Yes, sir. Well, I did grow up in Hale County, and I'm glad you found it. From my conversation, sometimes when I'm talking with Bishop Reddick, he has me to make sure that I acknowledge the fact that that is H-A-L-E County. And I just wanted to say that. So, but that's a county that is in. Well, let me just say Greensboro, Alabama would be the county seat.
Okay.
And it is, I guess, one of the biggest cities there, towns, if you will. But when I think about growing up in Hale County, my area was Sawyerville, Alabama.
Sawyerville, okay.
And I jokingly say to people that you have to be mindful that you don't bat your eye because you'll miss it going through it. But Sawyerville was a very, of course, that's home for me. And I guess everybody really appreciates their home. But it's a very small rural area. Sort of sits between, if you will, two towns. If Greensboro was sort of like about 10 miles to one side of us, and Utah was the other side of us. Most of the people who lived in the area were family folk. I lived in the area with, of course, my mom and dad, and across the road, if you will, was my uncle and his children. He had like 10 children that we grew up with.
Wow.
8 of whom were boys. So I didn't have a problem with having playmates.
You had your playmates.
I had my playmates.
Yes, sir.
You know, we almost had our own teams by the time we got some other cousins and family from around the areas to play, and we were rather seasonal growing up. Baseball, football, you name it, we were doing it. But that was a wonderful time growing up. You know,
yeah.
When I think about it, my parents were both there and cared for us. My dad, Edward Williams. Yes, that's that a picture of them. My dad was one who really believed in teaching values and morals, and my mom was a school teacher and made sure that we grew up having knowing the value of education. Between the two of them, they made sure that I and my sisters were taken care of, and they really did the best they could to shelter us, watch over us, and it was a nice time of growing up.
Wow, Bishop, I think, is this a picture of your siblings here?
That is a picture of my siblings, yes.
Okay, all right.
Looking at that picture, if I might say so, to my left would be my oldest sister, Barbara, my brother, George, and of course you will see me there. And to the right, to my left on the picture, and the right on the screen would be my younger sister, Gladys.
Okay. And you may have mentioned it. Now, which number were you in terms of children?
I'm the last. I'm the baby.
You're the baby.
I'm the baby. As a matter of fact, I'm like several years, or like 9 years behind my sisters. So for the most part, I grew up, by myself and so forth, because by the time I got to be 6th, 7th grade, they were all, even prior to that, probably around the 4th grade, they were all going to college.
Right.
But at any rate, I was the baby. They teased me because I'm so far behind them. They teased me and said that I slipped in here. And, but of course, it didn't matter. I tell them, right, when they tell me that, I say, "That's all right. I got here.
You got here. That's what's important." Yeah.
And, they were able. The blessing of being the baby like that is that they were old enough to give me a lot of love, a lot of attention and stuff. Yeah. So it really made me feel good. I felt special. I've been their little brother.
Right.
I guess all of my life.
I
And
love it. I
so
absolutely love it. So, Bishop, you came of age in the 1960s, your childhood and early 70s. What was race relations like for you in growing up in Sawyerville and in the county? You know, I know it was in the midst and on the cusp of major changes, but did you experience or see anything in your hometown or in the community that you lived in? Could you sense that there was something happening?
I could. Let me share with you several things about the race relationships. First of all, I want to say that our parents did the best they could to shelter us from
Hmm.
a lot of issues and what have you. But even though they did that, I must admit that we did hear from time to time about some of our churches being burned in the area. We heard about of course, things like Jim Crow laws and so forth. And we were able to see that sometimes things that happened in our neighborhoods and to our Black people didn't seem to have been just. I grew up hearing about, because we were like only an hour and a half away from Birmingham.
Okay.
And of course, you got to hear about Birmingham and its nickname Bumingham,
Birmingham, yes, sir.
knowing about what was going on there. And I guess about 2 hours to the other side of us would have been Selma. And you're familiar with the Edmund Peters Bridge and, of course,
Yes.
the King March. I remember being a young child at the time that Martin Luther King was assassinated. And of course, that was on the news. And I remember Mama, Dad was, I think, working at the time, but I remember Mama turning the television on and sharing that Martin Luther King had been shot
Mm.
and assassinated. And of course, at that time, I was young, and seemingly I can remember asking Mama about, well, who was Dr. Martin Luther King, and of course, that led to her sharing with me about it.
Yeah.
Some of the other things I remember my dad would share. He worked at night, and
Okay.
Dad worked at night like about 10 miles away from the house.
Hmm.
And when he would be leaving the town of Greensboro that I shared with you
Yeah.
earlier, he would tell me that he would drive through the city, and he would notice that the light that was green had been green for a minute, and it was probably going to change to red.
Okay.
So he would tell me how he would slow down and give the light an opportunity to go through its cycle so that by the time he got to the light, he would not have to stop.
Oh, wow.
And so I recognized then what he was doing, what he was saying in light of the times. At other times, he would tell me, when I started driving particularly, he would tell me things like, don't go and return the same way. In other words, don't just have a pattern for going, but mix up your route every now and then so that people will not necessarily know your route.
Your routine. Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember growing up and going to the dentist. I had a terrible toothache once. I went to the dentist, and this was shortly after the signs black and white had been taken down.
Okay.
So here it is that Mama put me out and told me to walk in the dentist and get in line, but she was going to go ahead and park the car, and it was going to take less than about 3 minutes and she'd be in the store. I mean, in the office, right? I go in the office, and I decided deliberately to go in the side that previously had the sign whites only.
Oh, wow.
When I got in there, I looked around. There were plush sofas and
Hmm.
up-to-date magazines and so forth. I went to the counter and shared with the lady what I wanted. I told her I needed to see a dentist about getting a tooth extracted. And she shared with me, okay, that's fine, but go around to the other side.
Are you kidding me? Really?
And I went to the other side. And in the other side were wood bottom, straight backed chairs and the old magazines that I assumed had been used and had come from the previous side.
Mm-hmm.
So therein was some of the things that I witnessed, and of course the school system was different because when I was going to high school, I ended up having to transfer to an area where um, the original white school went from 1 through 12,
Okay.
but the black school went from 1 through 9, which meant that all of the black students eventually had to go to the white school, and that's the school where I graduated. That's you're showing the picture, but all of us had to eventually go to the to the original white school, but those kids did not have to go for any reason to the black school.
Wow.
So those were some of the things that that I experienced growing up.
That's something, Bishop. I tell you, tough lessons to learn, but you learn them. Let me acknowledge that Senior Bishop and Mrs. Reddick are watching our hero from Hale County,
How
and
how
also Bishop Teresa Jefferson Staunton is watching as well. I saw a note from her, and so I wanted to let you know that.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to acknowledge the senior bishop and Wendy, Sister Wendy Reddick. God bless you all. Thank you all so much for joining and sharing with me. I want everybody to know that they have been really instrumental too in my journey, and I just appreciate them so much. And of course, Bishop Teresa Jefferson Staunton, I claim as my bishop now, in as much as she is presiding over my home area, and I dare even say my home church.
Yeah.
We thank God for her as well.
Well, we are delighted. And of course, if there are other bishops watching, y'all let me know so we can acknowledge them. So Bishop, you graduated from high school. What was the 3 years? I think you were there for 3 years.
3 years,
So
yes.
how was that experience for you? Had you been around, white folks in that number before?
Well, let me just say it was a small area, so
Okay.
that number was still not very many.
I see.
But it was still my first times, if you will, having prolonged times to spend and to share with others. Initially, it was a matter of getting to find myself and be comfortable in your own skin, so to speak, as we started going to school there. The experience itself turned out to be okay, pretty well. Most of my teachers at the time, well, I won't say most of them, but I did have my first time then experiencing having white teachers.
Okay.
And as time went on, I guess I got to know them. It turned out to be pretty good, a pretty good experience. I did not have any major issues
Yeah.
of being there. But of course, underlying, you could still feel and know
A little tension.
the tension is that way.
Right. So after you graduated from high school, you went on to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa?
I went to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and that was a wonderful experience. I felt proud to be going, especially going to a school that some years earlier the governor had shared segregation now, segregation
Yes,
now,
that's right.
segregation forever. So I was just happy to be able to go and to say that even though he declared segregation, some of us were able to go. I was not necessarily the first, but was able to go, and of course, able to graduate. That was an interesting experience because at the time, the school, I think, had about 16,000 students, and only about maybe 2,000 or maybe less were Black.
Oh, wow.
So it was still in its early stages.
Okay.
Now, couple that with the fact that I did not say this earlier, but the school that I graduated, my high school,
yes,
to show you how small it was, we only had 23 in our graduating class.
Whoa, that was small. Intimate. Let's say it was intimate.
It did. It was intimate. Yes. But at any rate, to go from that setting, whereas I think teachers knew us and took more of an interest in us, I guess, or was able to give us that more personalized attention.
Sure.
Go to a school that in some of my classes were taught in auditoriums of about 300 students. So that was quite overwhelming for me. And that coupled with the fact that I did not say this earlier,
Hmm.
but I finished high school at age 16,
Okay.
which means that I was very young when I started going there. And between, I think, my age and between the numbers, it was overwhelming. And my first semester there, I did not do very well. And of course, I ended up being on probation in terms of keeping my grades up. I was able to get them up, and of course, to maintain and to stay there for
Sure.
a couple more years.
Bishop, what do you attribute to the fact that you didn't do? Was it just the adjustment in terms of you stayed on campus?
I did not stay on campus.
Okay.
Fortunately, I was able to stay. My sister had married and so
Okay.
forth and had an apartment there. I was able to stay with her and her husband, and that allowed me to be able to save, if you will, some of the expenses of going to school, so that I was not on campus. But I do believe that the reason for my not doing so well was because of the two reasons I had mentioned. Coming from a small school,
Right.
I did not necessarily know how to navigate those large classes. My study habits were well enough at the time to do good, I guess, and to get me, allow me to do well at a smaller setting. But when I got to the college level at the university, allowed me to say I was with quite a few others who also had done very well, no doubt, in their high school pursuits. And because of my age, I just felt like I could not hang. I wasn't sure of myself.
Hmm.
I had little confidence. And needless to say, after I did not do well on my first semester, it kind of blew me away. I was known by my name in high school.
Okay.
When I got to college, I was a number.
Yeah.
I still remember, if you will, my
Right.
my student number, because that was the way you found out your grades. You'd go look on the board and stuff and see what
By your number.
by your
Yeah.
number. You were known by number. Very few people knew me. So I think those things really helped. And is really what contributed to my not doing so well.
Now,
But
Bishop,
I think my age had more to do with it than
sure, because you said you were 16 when you graduated.
no.
Now, and before I ask that, let me say hello to Lady Clarice Flake Cunningham. So good to see you. Faithful every Sunday she is on, and so we want to acknowledge you. And Mama Osi, I know you're on. Doria told me, good to have you too, Bishop.
Amen. Well, let me just greet both of them as well. God bless Sister Clarice for being on and sharing, and our prayers and blessings are with her continuously, along with Sister Osi. And thank you. She claims me as her child, so I appreciate Sister Osi. God bless you. Thank
Mama
you
also
for
got a
sharing.
lot of children, Bishop,
Yeah, I know that's right, and I am one of them, and proud to be.
and proud to be one too. But we're
Amen.
delighted to have you all on. So
God bless.
now you majored in health management, but before that, had you accepted your call to the ministry yet? Where were you spiritually? And let's back up for a second, because I did not ask you about growing up in the church as a young boy. Tell me about your church experience, and were your parents CMEs as well?
Yes, my parents were both CME. And growing up, of course, in my neighborhood and with those parents,
Hmm.
it automatically meant that I was going to be in church on Sunday. You know, you've heard people say they drug you to church.
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, you might as well get on up, get out of the bed, and get to
Because you
church
were
before
going.
they start dragging. I mean, you're going to go. So I went to church. My home church was at the time the Flatwood CME Church.
Okay.
It was a church that met on first and third Sundays. You're
Mhm.
familiar with the circuits.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we had first and third Sundays, and about 2-3 miles away was Liberty CME Church, and they met on second and fourth. Now
Okay.
we had the same pastors And many times we found out it was the same folk really served and worked together at both congregations, but we just had two separate churches. And
Yeah.
later, the churches under the leadership of Reverend Glenn Jones, a few people may know that name.
Hmm.
But the church united and became known as what is now Bass Tabernacle.
Oh, okay.
Bass was the presiding prelate at the time.
Right.
Churches were united. So that was my home church. And needless to say, at my home church, it was a great time of growing up, of sharing. Our parents were very influential. Sunday school teachers
Yeah.
were very influential in helping us. The church officers would come down at the beginning of the service, and they would have what we call devotionals, and they would lead long metered hymns. And oh man, it was just nice.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I love the Lord. He heard my cry, and
Yeah.
encouraged to keep our have and all of those things. Our churches were involved in really working to instill values and teach our children.
Mhm.
Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day. You're gonna have those speeches, man. You're
Absolutely.
gonna have those speeches.
So you were active with the CYF, of course, in the church.
Yes,
Yeah.
active with the CYF, and there were those who were a part of the church who also had started a Boy Scout. I should not forget one of the members, Mr. Charlie Johnson, who was over the Boy Scouts, and I was a Boy Scout, and they would take us on trips, and we had baseball teams, and at the church, on Sunday evenings, sometimes you'd go to church, you stay all day. You start with Sunday school, you have morning worship, you have evening service, and then at night we might have singings. That's what they call them,
Yeah.
singing.
Yeah.
And these were like the what do you call the quartet type singing. And man, that would be really on time. And I've always had a wonderful relationship. I was thinking about some of the preachers that we had: Reverend W.O. Davis, I.C. Little Page, Peter Kirksey. And my pastor at the time that I accepted my call was the Reverend Lester McLeod. And I just want to say, Reverend Lester McLeod was not a very well-educated man, but he said something to me that I carry with me all of the time. He said to me, he says, "You will find some other preachers who might be able to preach better than I can, who can administrate better than I can. But he said, you would not find anybody who is any more sincere."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I carry that with me, and that stuck with me. But I also, can I just make mention, I get excited when I'm talking. This takes me back to
I love it, Bishop.
period. So, there's another gentleman at my home church. I want to call his name. His name was Joseph Johnson, but we affectionately called him Pa Joe.
Pa Joe.
Pa Joe. Now, Pa Joe was the one of the older patriarchs in the church, and Pa Joe really took to helping and to develop a lot of the younger people and the younger children at the church. It was because of Pa Joe, who at the time was the Sunday school superintendent, who ended up making me or inspiring me to serve and to be a part of the Sunday school. And he started me, I think, at about age 10 or 11 to serving as the superintendent of the Sunday school. And of course, he had worked with the pastor, but I had started being the Sunday school superintendent at that age. And it was a joy. And I should not forget one of the times when the elder came. Now, I'm about 10, 11 years old, and Joe was sitting back. He'd sit on the front row and cross his legs every Sunday and watch me preside. But one Sunday when the elder came and it was time for the quarterly conferences, Pa Joe decided he was not going to give the report. So he had me to give the report to the elder.
Oh, my goodness.
And the elder, Reverend E.D. Bowie, started asking me a series of questions. And I was able to answer every question, like where do we order our literature from? Right. How many pieces do we order? And every question he asked me, I was able to answer. And Pa Joe looked at him and goes, "Is there anything else you want to know?" So It was a joy, but I say that affectionately because Pa Joe, along with parents, along with all of our teachers, along with all of those persons, even persons from the other church, our sister church, really
Yeah.
worked hard to help us. And on fifth Sundays, we would all get together with the Baptist church in the area.
Okay.
So we would have services every Sunday, and fifth Sundays we'd rotate from one church to the other. It was just a joy growing up. I could talk about that on and on.
But you know, Bishop, that is such a rich part not only of our history and heritage,
Yeah.
but I thank God now, some 25 years later, that Bishop Lake assigned me to my first church, which was 103 miles one way in a little small town called Washington, Georgia. And they only met one Sunday a month. I'd never heard of such because I grew up in the city, grew up at West Side CME under Reverend Thompson and Price. So a one Sunday church, I never heard of such.
Yeah.
But I learned so much about people and pastoring, hymn singing and note singing, you know. So you're right, Bishop. That was a rich part. Now, had you accepted your call? And when did you accept your call? And how old were you when you accepted your call to preach?
Good question. Let's see. I accepted my call. Should have been around 80, 81. I think I did my first sermon in January of 81.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were in your early 20s.
Yes. Early
Okay.
20s. Yes. And that was the early 20s. I had gone to the university. I had stopped sharing it at this point, but during my days at the university, even though I did not do so well,
Okay.
I did hang there for 2 years.
Okay.
And between that time, I went to school at Jeff State in Birmingham. Yes.
I was ready for you to say Jeff State.
Jeff State, yeah. And that's where I took up mortuary science.
Wait a minute. We got to talk about this for a second, Bishop. Because I grew up wanting to be a mortician.
Okay, yeah.
Never made it to mortuary school, but always fascinated by the science, mortuary science. And I did an internship at Alfonso Dawson Mortuary. But tell us about that experience. Did you complete your mortuary? Yeah, that's a
Yeah, I was just looking at the tables there. Okay, you got inside the house, and there's a restorative art. Okay.
Yeah, things that you were familiar with. But what did you want to be a mortician?
You know, I really don't know how that came in my mind. It is when I was growing up, I was really afraid of dead people. I was really afraid even to be around them.
Wow.
So how this came into my mind, I really don't know. I said, I think jokingly, but there was this gentleman I know who I ultimately ended up working for in Tuscaloosa, who would ride down the road. And as he was riding down the road, he'd be driving this big funeral car and waving at everybody going down the road. And I don't know if that's what prompted me, but at any rate, I had never given much thought about it. Then all of a sudden, it's as if being a mortician jumped in my head.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I enrolled in mortuary science school before even touching a deceased. I had never even touched anyone, and I said before, not being around anybody who had passed. So at that time, I went to Jeff State, and it was fascinating.
Yes,
I thoroughly enjoyed it because it was something new. It was something different. It gave me an opportunity to really, get to know something that I knew very little about. And may I say, without sounding too conceited, I did exceptionally well in terms of my classes.
Really?
And I was able to finish there, having done extremely well.
Okay.
And I finished there and got my license. At one point, I was the youngest licensed funeral director / embalmer in the state of Alabama. I think I held that record because I received that around 18, 19.
Wow.
When I was that age. And I worked for the gentleman that I shared with you, the Rollins Mortuary there in Tuscaloosa for quite a while. And then while there, I ended up going back to and finishing up my degree.
Okay.
At the university. And now, so that end is the pause. But by the time I got back to the university, to finish that my bachelor's degree,
Yes.
I had confidence. Mortuary science had given me the confidence that I needed to come back, to go back to the university and to finish and to do well. And subsequently, even when I went to seminary, I had more confidence that I was able to do the work. And I think I did much better even after that.
That's an amazing story. So you went from getting the dead prepared to preaching over the dead and waking up the dead in churches and all of those.
Don't you see? Don't you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
somebody on here, I was trying to find it because they posted a note. They were from your Rollins mortuary days. And if I find it, I'll post it. But someone want. Oh, here we go.
yeah.
Rashawn Smith. Hello, Bishop Williams from the Rollins mortuary crew.
How about that? And he is watching. They are watching there. Thank you. God bless you, Rashawn and crew, to all of you at Rollins Mortuary. But yes, he is one of those the morticians at that site now at the Rollins Mortuary.
At the Rollins mortuary.
That is great. I'm glad to know that. I didn't know that he would be watching.
Yes.
He would be watching.
Also, we're delighted to have our wonderful, faithful friends, Bishop and Mrs. Marshall Gilmore, extending greetings to you, Bishop.
Thank you, Bishop and Mrs. Gilmore. God bless you. I say to them, and I'll say to everybody on the line now, that I have such fond regards for them. Just love them dearly. I remember when I was pastoring in Chicago and invited them to come down, and they came, and we just had such a wonderful time bonding and sharing, and it's just a relationship that I have treasured with them. And also I have asked, and I'm looking forward to Bishop Gilmore closing out and sharing with us at our annual conference of the South annual conference. Yes, so we're excited. God bless you, Bishop and Mrs.
That's going to be, and you're going to be doing that on Zoom.
That'll be Zoom. Yes, I'll send the links. Whosoever
Bishop,
you let them come.
Send me the link so I can be a part of that. I would love.
By all means, we'd be honored to have you.
Well, I appreciate that. So, yeah. Bishop, you go back to school, you finish, and you are now. Are you thinking about seminary? And at this time, you know, who's mentoring you in the ministry? Was it your presiding elder? And had you been ordained deacon and elder yet by the time you got to seminary?
By the time I got to seminary, I had been ordained deacon and elder. Let me just share this with you. In 81, when I accepted my call, I preached my first sermon in January of 81.
Okay.
Went to the annual conference. I was admitted on trial.
Okay.
And ordained deacon the next year.
Wow.
And that's ordained deacon by Bishop C.A. Kirkendall.
Okay.
And the following year, I was remained on trial and was ordained elder by Bishop Dotsie Ivertus
Isom. Wow.
I had pastored my first year in 81. So really I started pastoring a small church after 6 months.
Okay.
And that church was in Lamar County. They call it New Church.
New Church.
Yeah, that was the name. They called it New Church. But I would drive, you spoke of your 103 miles. I would drive 75 miles one way to meet 3 folk, and that was a good Sunday. That was a good Sunday. At other times, they would call me and tell me that the roads were wet that led from the county road to the church, and therefore we could not get to the church because the church sat back, if you will, in a back area, until they were able to build a church and we brought it closer to the road.
Wow.
But at any rate, that was quite an experience. Let me just say this about that church. There were those 3 folk. But one of the gentlemen there, and I found out, and we have some wonderful CMEs all over the church. There was a gentleman there who would make sure that every Sunday that I got there, that he would give whatever he needed to give to supplement the salary, such that I would receive $50. And that was enough to put gas in my little Volkswagen, and enough at the time for Carmen and I to get a sandwich on our way back home. And gas on a sandwich and so forth. But I kept going to that church in my mind, and I just kept saying in my heart of hearts how wonderful these persons were. And I kept saying 2 or 3.
Yes.
Rather than my name.
That's right.
God said he would be on
That's
this, and it was a wonderful time of sharing. I digress there. I've gotten off the question that you asked.
Okay. No. You know, this is an informal flow. Couple of things. What was you preached your first sermon? Do you remember the subject?
He preached Christ.
He preached
Christ.
Christ.
Yes, and that comes after Paul's conversion.
Wow.
There's a passage, I can't go to it now, but it's in Acts that says, and he preached Christ, after the conversion. And that was my first sermon, stuck with me then, still sticks with me now. And, I dare say every now and then I go back in my mind to thinking about when I was first called and challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And the word suggests to all of us now, even at a time when, if we are not careful, so many things take our attention.
Yeah.
Preach Christ.
Preach Christ.
Preach Christ.
Wow. Bishop, how did you, if I may ask, and I've asked the other bishop, how did you know you were called to preach? Do you have a call story of some sort?
Well, I'd already said that I'd had a history in the church and had been encouraged by so many people, especially the older folk, in the church. I remember, man, as a child, I probably was about 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
I remember telling my dad that I had a dream that I was a preacher. Dad did almost like that passage of scripture says, and he pondered it in his heart. But he didn't say very much more.
Yeah.
But I'm convinced that Daddy kept that and pondered it and prayed for me.
Yeah.
I think it is safe to say that even with the church members, they nurtured me, they cared for me, they always had their hands on me, trying to make sure that I was I guess being encouraged forward. And at the risk of sounding like the older folk, you know how folks tell you, boy, I see something in you. But they would always tell me stuff like that. I'm scratching my head wondering, okay, well, whatever you see, let's see if I see it later. But at any rate, as time went on, I ended up going to buy a Bible. And at the time, I paid quite a bit for the Bible. And that was going to be my catalyst, my incentive, rather, to read the Bible.
Okay.
So I read the Bible through and through. And of course, that just goes to show now how the Lord was working on me even then. I got to a point where preaching just stayed on my mind. And it is as if day in and day out, I always had preaching on my mind. Mm-hmm. People say that there's a godly call. I learned this when I went to seminary, a godly call and an earthly call. And I dare say the earthly call consisted of so many people, various churches, inviting me to be the speaker for Children's Day or for youth days.
Yeah.
Inviting me to lead and in devotional services or to teach Sunday school. I found myself at one point telling people, I think the Lord is calling me to preach, but don't you tell it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell it.
Right.
And later on, I recognized I was telling more folk than those folk who were telling others.
Oh, wow.
So I was constantly telling people. I'd heard the older folks talk about asking for signs.
Okay.
So I prayed. I said, Lord, show me a sign. Show me some signs. I remember praying because I had lost my class ring, my high school class ring. And that was important to me. I had lost my ring, didn't know where I had put it. And I had searched everywhere that I thought that ring would be. And then I finally reached in the vest, and that show you how long ago, the vest of one of my suits. And there was the ring. And needless to say, when I found the ring, the first thing I thought about was, okay, Lord, this is the sign that I asked you for. But then I told myself, no, that's not what it means. So I was not ready to accept it at that point. I kept on praying for signs and so forth. And finally, I said, Lord, I do not need another sign. I need a conviction.
Mm.
I changed my prayer and say, Lord, just convict me now to where I'll know beyond the shadow of a doubt that this is what you are calling me to do. I have you to know that after praying that for about a week, I called my pastor and shared with him that I was ready to accept the call.
Wow.
His words to me, I was waiting on you.
Mm.
But of course, that was my call story. And I tell people I am as convicted about being a preacher as I am about knowing that I have been saved.
Wow, Bishop.
Not a question in my mind.
Wow.
So
And so you were in your teens at the late teens, early 20s, I
early
believe.
20s, this
Yeah,
was probably about 80, 81.
81. Okay. Now,
Could have been
had Sister Carmen, your lovely wife, come into the picture yet? And how did you all meet? We want all the details. We want to know.
Well, I normally say that I had gone to Mobile and she carried me to the bay, got down on her knees and proposed to me. I know she's watching, so she'll probably give you
And
something
I
in
know
the
she's
chat.
watching because she said she was going to
Yeah,
watch. So you give us the version. And Sister Williams,
sure.
you're welcome to come on and clean up the version if you
Yeah, I'm about to say she's going to have another version. But at any rate, I remember when we met at the University of Alabama in
Okay.
Tuscaloosa. We met because we had a very dear friend in common. Many of you would know Dr. Abraham Smith. Dr. Abraham Smith at one point was a professor at the Interdenominational Theological Center. But at any rate, they knew each other because they were from the same area of Mobile. He and I had gotten close and were friends because we had already met at the university.
Okay.
So we called and shared, hey man, where we going to church Sunday? We were going to go to the Port of St. Paul CME Church in Northport, Alabama.
Okay.
And we went to church, and after the service, we ended up stepping out on the, I guess, on the porch of the church, and we were greeting each other. And he had brought Carmen to church with him because she wanted to go to church and didn't know very many places or many people there in the city. So he brought her to church, and to make a long story short, he introduced us.
Oh, wow.
After that time, we got to know each other. She found out I was a mortician. She cut me loose very quickly. She said, no, I don't want to be bothered. But then she really was the first woman that I ever sent flowers to. So I sent flowers to her, and like on a Friday, I didn't hear from her Friday. I didn't hear from her Saturday. He didn't hear from her Sunday. And I'm saying, okay, fine. I'm not going to call this woman. I'm not going to say anything else to her. She could at least call and say thank you. Come to find out, she had gone home for the weekend.
So she never got the flowers.
So she didn't get the flowers until she got back. And when she got back, the flowers were waiting on the desk. And she tells the story how she went over to look on the desk at the reception desk in her dorm. Mm-hmm. And, oh, look, somebody got flowers. And she goes over there and looks at them. And then she reads her name, and she starts, I got flowers. But of course, needless to say, she did call me and acknowledge that she had gotten the flowers. And of course, after that, it was a series of dating. She probably wouldn't want you to know that sometimes when I was driving the hearse and working and I was going somewhere to work, I'd drive by, pick her up at the street at the university. She'd jump in the hearse and we'd go off to Birmingham together and come back. You know, I was working, but she would be along with the ride.
In the hearse.
In the hearse.
I love it. I absolutely.
I mean, you don't miss an opportunity. You know what I'm saying.
I see you, Bishop. Wow.
We ended up, as time went on, getting to know each other. And of course, when I started pastoring, she would support me by going to the churches and stuff that we were pastoring. And of course, then in 82, she said, I do.
I do.
And we did.
Beautiful.
And needless to say, that picture does not show all of the party, but I do want to suggest that Dr. Abraham Smith was our best man. And
Oh,
many of you would probably know Reverend Desi Eccles,
Eccles, yes.
also a part. No, wait a minute. No, did I get that right? Well, at any rate, I can't call all those folks, but he thank you for part of my wedding and stuff like that too. But it was a wonderful time and celebration and sharing.
Well,
But we had a wonderful time, and it has been a joy.
well, I tell you, and I snatched a couple of pictures from her Facebook page. She has some wonderful pictures on Facebook, by the way. Let her know that, Sister Williams, I love your Facebook page, but I just thought this was so charming. Look at this one, Bishop.
How about that?
I just had to post that one.
She has that adorned in our house.
Does she?
Yes, she is.
And the one with her parents.
And that's her parents.
Yeah.
And her little sister Karen. Her dad is holding her little sister Karen.
Okay.
And that's her mother. Her father is deceased, but her mother is still living. And as a matter of fact, she lives with us now.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Enjoy.
Just a wonderful picture. So you're married, you finished school, and you're off to ITC.
Off to ITC. And let me share with you some of the
about that ITC experience, Bishop.
Yeah. Before I get to the experience, may I just share this? You had asked me about the influences. I had befriended Abraham Smith.
Okay.
And Abraham Smith Dr. Abraham Smith was already going to ITC and so forth. He and I became very good friends and so forth. And he has really been an inspiration for me in terms of ministry.
Okay.
And of course, since he had gone to ITC, he spoke highly of it. He let me understand, knowing going to school is a call to preach, is a call to be educated. So, of course, I had that before me. Bishop Marvin Thomas, who also served as my elder, was also instrumental in encouraging me to go, because he too had gone to seminary. And of course, serving as my elder and one of the young preachers, if you will, in the area as well, also had encouraged me in terms of going to seminary. When I was pastoring at one of the churches, and many people would know Fred Hughes.
Okay.
He was very well known in the North Central Alabama Conference and the Tuscaloosa District. I was pastoring his church, the church that he's a member, Emory Chapel Church. As a layperson, he drove to Tuscaloosa to the funeral home where I was working, pulled me aside and said, "It's time for you to go to seminary."
Wow.
And his words was, "If you want to go places in the church, it is time for you to go on to seminary."
Yeah.
I had pastored that's Bishop Thomas, yes. And he has been an inspiration and there for us all along the journey. Let me say he served as a friend, but he's also served as my presiding elder. He married, he baptized my oldest daughter, Sylvia, my younger daughter, and he recently married Sylvia, and he was my dean when I graduated from seminary.
Wow.
So he has been of presence in my life, and a very valuable presence.
Yes, indeed.
At any rate, let me just share with you about going to school. Fred Hughes came and had shared with me that I needed to go to seminary, and he was pastoring. I was pastoring his church, and when that was a circuit church as well, I would go every second and fourth Sunday. When he found out that I was going to seminary, he was one of the officers there, and he does not take credit for this, but I know he went back and told them that I was going to go to seminary. That church doubled my salary in order to be able to help me to get to seminary.
Wow.
And I really thank that church because at the time I was pastoring Emory Chapel and Franconia. Both of those churches were in Pickens County. And even though I say he talked to me and that church doubled the salary, I need to share also that Franconia did the same thing. So that helped me. They really helped me to be able to go to seminary.
Seminary. Wow.
Of course, when I got to seminary, you asked me to tell you about that experience. I had mentioned Desi Eccles earlier. I met Desi Eccles, and he was one of the persons who shared with me in the midst of my fear and anxiety. Man, shall I take this class? Shall I take that class? He shared something with me that I haven't forgotten. He said, man, don't be afraid to go and take the classes and do your best.
Right.
Many of the folk who tell you that this is hard, that you won't do well, many of those folk are folk who will not apply themselves to study and hard work. He says, forget about that. Go do your work. And I appreciate that, because that allowed me to go and gave me a better attitude. And needless to say, I did well even while there in seminary. There, you can see a scholarship award. You really did some digging.
I try to do my research.
Bill, yes, scholarship. But at any rate, I want to thank, and right now, another person who was very instrumental for me while I was there, and that is Dean William Larkin.
Yes, sir.
He was very helpful. He made sure that he did what he could to help me to be able to hang and to go to seminary, and to stay in seminary rather, and to encourage me along the way, pulling me aside, being a mentor and a father and so forth and all of that.
Wow.
That is my class. And I had been looking for that picture. No wonder I couldn't find it, because you had it. But all of those persons were very helpful and instrumental to my going. You see Desi Eccles front right.
Yes.
James Morris beside him, who is now in Orlando. And in that brown suit is a debonair young fella.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's something. What
slipping me with some of them. Behind Desi and between Desi and Morris is Christopher Neal Manning. He was my roommate while we were there staying in the Phillips area. He is from the 7th. There's an interesting story, and we laugh and talk and share with each other even now. But Chris was in systematic theology, and I was in pastoral care.
Okay.
And we would always share together. But one day we had a serious argument because he was saying out of his studies, man, you preachers and pastors, you all ought to be mindful of what you're telling these folks, talking about a pie in the sky and all that kind of stuff. Tell them there's no pie in the sky. You ought to get your pie right. And I'm saying, man, I understand what you're saying, but you don't take people's hope from them all at once. We had an argument, man, and we in a little dorm, and you're familiar with how small they are over at Phillips.
At Phillips, right.
Listen, it was as if we had drawn an imaginary line in the room, right?
Right.
And dared each other to cross that line. We went to bed that night, hot, mad, angry. And it was so tense in that room that we could hear each other breathing.
Get out of here, Bishop.
And then tell me that the Lord doesn't have a sense of humor.
Okay.
Around 2 o'clock in the morning, we heard something, a paper bag rattling in the trash can.
What?
We both woke up and we looked at each other. You hear that? You hear that? Come to find out, it was obviously a rat that was in the trash can.
Jesus.
But I didn't tell that to say and highlight the rat. I highlight the fact that the Lord must have a sense of humor, but because of that rat, we started back talking to each other because we were so hot when we went to bed. And we finally came to the conclusion that we and agreed that there's a place for pastoral care.
Right.
And there is a place for the systematic theologian. And we both have to work together to make sure that our people and the church goes forward.
But you know, Bishop, that sounds like a good old seminary argument. There's nothing like those arguments with your classmates.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
Oh,
I'm telling you. And he and I can get in them even now.
Even now, huh?
Even now. And then turn around and laugh at each other.
That's amazing. I also saw now Dr. J. Bernard Kynes. Was he one of your classmates as well?
Dr. J. Bernard Kind.
On the picture as well.
He was really a year before us, but that was a part of the fellowship.
Right.
Yes, but he was a year, I think, before us, and finished. I finished in 88, so I'm sure he probably finished in 80, 87.
Well, it says here that you maintain a high GPA, and you were the president of the Phillips School of Theology Fellowship. I mean, you were doing your thing then, and Mrs. Williams was with you as well, right?
Well, she did not go to Atlanta with me
while you were in seminary.
When I was in seminary. As a matter of fact, you see, our first daughter, Sylvia, was born, and she was working.
I see.
Teacher. Okay. So what happened is that every week on Sundays, we would carry Sylvia to my parents, Sawyerville, and Carmen would work through the week and go back down to get Sylvia on weekends.
Okay.
That's what it was initially. And I would come home every week. So every Friday I would drive home and go to work for a half day at the funeral home. I'd work Friday, Saturday. On Sunday I would go to pastor, and then on Monday I'd head back to seminary, back to
That's a lot of driving.
It's a lot of driving. I tell people that I got to know what just about every mile marker was. Sure. And the Lord really took care of us and blessed me as I travel. I remember two incidents that I'd like to share. I remember traveling one night. I was so tired that when I left Tuscaloosa, I remember going through Birmingham. I don't remember anything else until I got off on Beckwith.
Wow.
I don't remember anything else. And that was a good hour and a half driving. I don't remember anything else until I got there. That was one thing.
Jesus be a will, as they say. Jesus took over and you on autopilot.
I know that's right. Won't you do it? And the next thing that the other incident is that my roommate Chris was coming to Alabama with me to spend the weekend with me one day. And I was driving a Volkswagen. And as you know, there's no weight on the front end of a Volkswagen.
Okay.
So that it had been raining. I hit a water puddle. My car started hydroplaning. I went from the extreme left lane across two lanes and went under the back of a tractor trailer truck.
Jesus.
Fortunately, we hit. I say the tires. This is my scientific understanding. We hit the tires, and the tires bounced me back across those two lanes, hit the guardrail. We spun around a time or two. The windshield of the car was lying on the ground, and Christopher, my roommate, and I both got out of the car and looked at each other and started hugging each other, thinking about how good it is to be alive. We were standing on the interstate and doing that, and the tractor trailer never stopped because he never knew that he had hit us.
Jesus.
I remember that.
Wow.
So when I tell you the Lord will take care of you,
yes, Lord.
I'm not telling you what I heard.
That's right. What you
I'm
know.
telling you what I know. Been there.
Lord have mercy.
But that was an incident.
On that note, let me just pause for a second to say that your good friend and member of the bench and dean and all, Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas, is watching, and my first bishop and mentor and my church member too, I claim him, Bishop Othel Lakey, is watching, and both of them send their regards to you, Bishop.
Amen. Well, God bless you. Thank you. And I've already talked about Bishop Marvin Thomas and how much he has meant down through the years, how much he means, and of course, how he has shared with us down through the years in the family. And I just thank God for him. I also just want to say to Bishop Lakey, God bless you. He too has been very instrumental and very helpful among those persons who I dare say, had it not been for his assistance and help and mentorship and guidance, I would not be where I am at this point. So I just want to say thank you to them as well. Now, you notice I have not said anything yet about my mentor. I'm going to get to that. I'm not going to leave my bishop out either.
Because you know I got a few pictures waiting. I'm just waiting for you to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you finished seminary, Bishop. Were you were pastoring and working at the funeral home? What was next for you? And walk us through the next few years of you and your family's life.
May I take you back to seminary for just a second?
Please, absolutely.
Because I want to highlight, I've shared with you that Bishop Marvin Thomas, aside from being with me and the family through my through other aspects of my life, he was the dean at the time that I graduated from seminary with the doctorate degree. And I've already shared, the blessings of in other areas. But I also want to share with you, when I graduated with the doctorate degree, I also wanted to give kudos to Bishop Thomas Brown.
Yes, yes.
What many people don't realize is that I had started working on my seminary degree. And after I'd finished my classwork, you have so long, X number of years to write the dissertation.
That's right.
I had moved to Carter Temple and it started pastoring. And after first one thing, then another, I was slow in writing the dissertation.
Okay.
I, as a matter of fact, was about to get dropped out of the program because it was taking me so long. And Dr. Stephen Razor said, I don't think you're going to finish. I'm going to drop you off. We're gonna not worry about this. You're no longer affiliated. I said, no, please. I pleaded with him and he gave me one more shot.
Right.
Needless to say, I got my act together. But Bishop Brown was my advisor.
Okay.
And I want folks to know that he went out of his way above and beyond the call of duty. I say that to help me to finish the doctorate.
Oh, wow.
Because even though he was elected, I think in 2006, when we would go to various meetings, connectional meetings,
yes,
he would make time to meet with me after or during that meeting to make sure that he was helping me and that I was on track for receiving my doctorate.
Oh, wow.
And I just can't thank him enough for the work that he did and how he continued to share with me, even though he was bishop and had other things, that was going before him. And let me just say this too, not just about him. I told you I was going to mention Bishop Stewart, but Bishop Stewart has been so much to me, brother, father, mentor, But I remember even when I was getting ready and going to before I was had gotten this degree, during my lapse period of having finished the studies and the dissertation.
Right.
I was getting a little bit too slow. And for those who know Bishop Stewart,
yes, Bishop Martin. And I just wanted to put up Bishop Brown. All right.
Bishop Brown. That's right. Both of them have been very helpful and instrumental to me. And then I wanted to share that Bishop Stewart,
yes,
when I was getting too slow, Bishop Stewart jacked me up in his kind, firm, stern way.
Right.
You all know that anybody who knows Bishop Stewart, knows he can smile at you and play with you, and then all of a sudden he wipes that smile off of his face. He means business. But he looked at me one day and he said, "Look, when are you going to finish your dissertation?" And I've been giving all kinds of excuses. And he said to me, "Maybe I want something for you that you don't want for yourself."
Whoa.
Man, when he said that, I don't need to tell you, between that and Dr. Razor telling me that I was about to be dropped, I got on the ball and I finished my work.
Wow.
And I could not begin to tell you how excited and happy I was to present Bishop Stewart with the first draft of the dissertation. And therein is where I was getting my doctorate, and Marvin Thomas there is the dean at that time.
That's powerful. That is powerful.
Lincoln was my dean earlier.
You've had some incredible mentors in your life that have poured into you. And I know that because I'm reading the comments, you're doing the same pouring into your preachers and lay and others. I mean, I can't even post all of the comments. There's so many of them, coming along. But Bishop, walk us through your ministry You know, we are trying to slowly get to when you offered yourself as an Episcopal leader, and Bishop Lakey writes this in your uh, section on the book, but he talks about, you know, your ability to go to these churches, that you were a tremendous pastor. He talks about serving, you know, at Flatwood and getting your education, and throughout your ministry, Bishop Williams was involved in community affairs, and just, you know, all of these things are walking and leading you up to the episcopacy. Talk about some of the churches that you pastored in your
Okay.
career.
Thank you. I first started out pastoring a church. I've mentioned New Church.
Hmm.
And that was a church that I drove 75 miles one way to meet three folks on a good Sunday. And it was at that church that I shared with you about this gentleman who made sure that I had, that he supplemented my salary so that I could walk away with at least $50. That was a very learning experience, and very testing, if you will, for me, because it allowed me to recognize that the people of God are some great people, and regardless to where we are, again, as I say, two or three gathered in my name,
Yes.
he'll be in the midst. And whether we have large churches or small churches, we are called to serve.
Hmm.
Then after I was at that same time, I was at Owens Chapel, which is one of our churches at the time that was in Carrollton. I don't think that church is there anymore now, but it was in Carrollton, Alabama. They had a man named there by the name of well, I won't call his name, but they had a gentleman there who was a professor of a school. And he was well liked and looked up to in the community. And he felt that it was his job to make sure that all the new preachers who the bishop sent were shoved off from the shores, if you will. And it was up to them to do it. And sometimes it seemed as though he kind of made it a little bit difficult at times. But at any rate, it was a learning experience because it taught us, and I say us because Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas served at that church as well.
Okay.
It taught us that we how to work with other people, and sometimes work around and through situations that might not necessarily be the best. From there, I went to Emory Chapel and Franconia. And those churches are also, they are in Pickens County, they are in Aliceville. Franconia is a church that one of the ladies there is related to, I think it was Dr. Jerry Poole from Georgia,
Yeah.
his aunt. And her name was Annie Winston Poole.
Oh, wow.
I should never forget, Sister Annie Winston Poole looked at me, and she had a way of talking with her finger. So she had put her finger on your shoulder as she talked. And she said, "And you gonna be a bishop in this church." And at that time, you know, I wasn't even thinking about it. I just received her. But at any rate, I guess if there's any word about prophecy, I learned that
Sister Poole, huh?
But at that church, I learned what it was like to really budget.
Yeah.
Because there was a small church, we had bills, and many times the people and the money was just not coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with a strategy. I said, y'all, we need $1,000, just using this as a figure. We need $1,000 every month, and we have 10 members. So that means I need each member to give me $1,000, bring $100 to church,
Right.
every first Sunday. And the idea was, if we brought it on the first Sunday, if we had to make it up, we can make it up on the third Sunday.
On the third Sunday,
So that taught me about budgeting. And those folk were ready and willing to do it. And I shared with them, even if you don't come that Sunday, you still got to send your money. When I got over to the other church in the area was Emory Chapel. And of course, I shared with you about how that was the beginning, if you will, of well, I won't say the beginning, but that was where Brother Fred Hughes was, who encouraged me to go to seminary. And of course, I learned then the importance, continuing to instill in me the importance of the education. And he really shared with me the value, because I could see how he loved his congregation and loved that church, he and the others, and allowed me to see that good members who love the church
Hmm.
and really help the pastor in terms of leadership and doing what needs to be done. So I really appreciated him and for all of what he and that church poured in me. From there, I went to the Mount Olive in Florida, Orlando, Florida.
Oh, wow.
I stayed there for about 5 months. I was assigned at the annual conference,
Okay.
and in 80, should be in 88. And I was there until December. I went there, and for me, that represented the first time that I was at a full-time
Okay.
and an urban church. And I was only there for 5 months because at the time when Southside came open, there was a vacancy at Southside, and Bishop Richard Oliver Bass was my bishop.
Yeah.
I had just finished seminary, so he allowed me to come back to Southside and to be the pastor there.
Oh, wow.
I say to the folk, to everybody, that I moved to Florida and stayed 5 months, just long enough to go to SeaWorld, Epcot, Disney, and have somewhere to stay and serve while I was there. In
Wow.
January of 89, I came to Southside and was there for 13 years. It
Okay.
represented an urban church as well.
Okay.
I credit and thank God for Dr. R.R. Somerville,
Hmm.
who I say helped me tremendously to know how to become an urban pastor.
Pastor, yes, sir.
He would come by every day and pick me up, and we'd go to breakfast and we'd talk about church and so forth. And he'd pick me up. I had the children at the time. I said, man, I can't go to breakfast. I got children. I have to support. I can't be affording to go to dinner. Man, get in the car. Come on. And he would take me, and he really helped me to learn how to navigate politics, if you will, and community service, and as well as church work. And he helped me tremendously. While at Southside, it was there that we got involved in the ministry, because I had gotten tired of just raising claims, preaching, and having services. I wanted to do something else that would make its impact. And it was there that we started the ministry for persons who were addicted. And it was that ministry that served as the basis for my writing the dissertation.
Okay.
And that church also helped me to recognize the importance of bringing other folk into the fold and creating new leadership. I saw something when I got there at the Southside Church. There were persons who were already in leadership who would bring other folk in leadership, and they would make other folk the chair of events.
Oh, really?
New folk being made the chair. This was novel to me. New folk being made chair of the event.
Yeah.
But the older folk would say, I'm going to be the chair of finance. Another would say, I'll be over program. Another would say, I'll be over publicity. The idea behind it is that older folk were being the chairs of various things, such that the chair of the overall event could not fall. Are you following me? That was unique to me.
I love it.
And then, of course, that made the new persons feel good.
Yeah.
That made them feel involved, and they were involved for the duration of their lives, many of them.
Wow.
And that was something that was new and different, as opposed to folk who've been there saying, I got to be in charge of this.
Yes.
There were folk there who would say things like encourage folks. There was this lady named Mrs. Pullum. Bless her heart, she passed, but Mrs. Pullum she was a stewardess, and she would get around and say, no, I'm an old lady. Let these young folks do it. And affectionately, there was Mama Doris, who was a missionary person, who would say things like, I'll get my girls to do it. And her girls would step up and do anything she asked her to do. But the thing is, they showed me and helped me to see how important it is to bring on new leadership.
Yes.
And how new leadership can be brought on and supported in such manner that they felt good about what they were doing, and
Wow.
they became lifelong members. And I appreciated them for teaching me that. And of course, when I got to Carter Temple, I say, was a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Many ministries already going forth.
Yeah.
I had to learn, of course, about handling large budgets. Um, if while we were there, they had many ministries, and I had to learn how to navigate, if you will, politics. If you know anything about Chicago,
Yeah.
Chicago is very political,
I heard, Bishop,
and sometimes it showed itself up in the church.
in the church.
And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but
Right.
how do we do things, um, um, in a manner that the church mission and ministry will go forth. So all of my assignments, it has been a very learning experience. And again, let me just plug and say of how all of my bishops who made assignments had been very important to me and helping me. Brought me to um, Bishop Bass brought me to Birmingham.
Okay.
Bishop Stewart was elected and allowed me to stay there. And Bishop Stewart is responsible for my going from Southside
Okay.
to Carter
Wow.
and ultimately supporting the ministry and supporting me to the extent that I am here. Without his leadership and support, I would not be who and where I am now.
Well, both Bishop Thomas Brown and Dr. Louise are watching. They send their regard, and Bishop Stewart is watching as well. If you just want to.
Amen. Well, greetings first of all, to the Browns. God bless you all. Thank you so much for all of what you have done, pouring into my life, into my ministry. Mrs. Brown, Dr. Brown, I'm sorry, know that you are in our thoughts and our prayers, during this time with your mom. But we also want to say to Bishop and Mrs. Stewart, I cannot thank you all enough for everything that you have done, how you continuously pour into me and my family and our ministry. God bless you all. And I cannot say enough about what they mean to me.
Yes, indeed, Bishop. Thank you so much. And Reverend Dr. Claude Bass sends his regards to you as well, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Bishop Bass, as you all know, was Claude's father.
Yeah.
He mentored and helped me out. Again, like I said, that's the reason I got to Southside, Bishop Bass.
So, Bishop, I know you don't have to expound upon the politics of ministry in Chicago, but for those of us who are from the South, just if you would, you don't have to call any personalities, names, or situations, but what is the politics of ministry in Chicago? Just for those who are watching and don't quite understand, we know what church politics, entail, but just help us to kind of paint that picture of what church politics you experienced.
Well, allow me to just say it this way. We are the products of our environment.
Okay.
We're the products of our environment.
Yes,
so
sir.
Many times, even unknown to us, what is going on in our environment, many times it shapes what I do and how I respond and how I act.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at Chicago politics to a large degree, Chicago politics is who's working well with you,
okay,
and who is it's like you do this for me, I do this for you type thing.
Okay.
And sometimes, if we're not careful, that is the type of thing that comes into play, even in the church, not just in Chicago, but in any of our churches.
Yes, sir.
And we have to be mindful of that, particularly when that might not necessarily be in the best interest of the church.
I got you.
That's the point that I was really trying to,
to
make. We understand that politics really is in everything. I had a conversation not too long ago with one of our preachers, and I was sharing you really can't get around politics in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But you just got to make sure that in the process that you're not stepping outside of the boundary lines.
That's right.
Of God's word and what God would have us to do.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm sure that has blessed a number of us who are listening and watching and understanding and dealing with church politics throughout. All churches have some level, if you will, of engagement, and it's how you manage. So, Bishop, now you're at Carter, and did you have a dream about being bishop? We know it was prophesied, but how did you get from there to making the decision to offer yourself for the episcopacy?
Well, I guess it had been something that had been on my mind for some time. I remember a long time ago, Bishop Reddick and I had a conversation, and he concluded with me that because of the politics, I probably would not even like the idea of being a bishop. He says to me, you don't like the politics of the church. And of course, I was a long way from that at the time.
Right, right.
But I remember later, I think probably in the mid-90s, that I was having a conversation with Bishop Stewart.
Okay.
And Bishop Stewart shared with me, ultimately, what do you want to do? He asked the question, what do you want to do? Because in our church, we need some presidents of colleges, we need some general officers. And he asked, what do you want to do? And at that time, I remember saying to him, I would like to be bishop.
Okay.
For the most part, it was just a thought that I had shared with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, for the most part, it was like initially it might have been just something that resonated with him.
Right.
I don't remember us having that conversation, not in that manner, for a long time.
Okay.
But speaking of my road, I think Bishop Stewart put me in positions to see what being a bishop might entail, and to give me opportunities to expand my ministries. What am I saying? He gave me the opportunities to serve financial endeavors in areas such as being on the joint board. I was the joint board chair. He gave me the opportunity to serve as treasurer, and ultimately made me budget director for the 3rd Episcopal District.
Okay.
He allowed me to serve on various boards, such as the Board of Trustees at Miles College, and allowed me the opportunity to go to represent at World Methodist conferences that were held in England and in Africa.
That's right.
I've said to you that he encouraged seminary, and he just helped me to get a feel for what, yes, that's it. That's the World Methodist Conference. Yeah. And he helped me to get a feel for what it is like and some of the things that we have to do. From time to time, I never made his appointments, but he would help me to understand some of the considerations that one needs to give.
Okay.
In order to make a good appointment.
Okay.
Considerations such as the spouse of the preacher. What are they doing? Are they working? Can they move easily? What about the children?
Right.
What expenses and housing and stuff like that? He allowed me to hear and to understand. And some things like that you don't learn in seminary. Sure. He allowed me to, if you will, shadow him such that I would be able to learn those things. Additional to that, I remember that I thought within myself, I said, now, if the Lord has allowed me to start pastoring after 6 months, my. That's the crew. After 6 months, and to have pastored the first churches, a first church after about 7 years, and then to have gone and to stay there for 13, to go to Carter, another first church, and stay there for 8 years, and to have served and represented in various places. I started then, I guess, wondering if the Lord has allowed me to do all of this in short periods, then perhaps what is the Lord really wanting me to do?
Right.
And I finally decided to offer myself to offer myself forward. And believe it or not, I had resolved within myself saying, I'm going to try this one time and see what happens.
Okay.
And that was a part of me saying, and I don't mean to make light of anything, but I was saying and had the attitude that if this is for me, the Lord will open the door and allow it to happen.
Yes.
If not, I was totally satisfied being a pastor and serving where I was serving, or wherever, in this case, Bishop Stewart asked me to serve.
Serve.
I was satisfied because in my mind, It was not necessarily serving as this or that.
Okay.
The idea was to serve.
To serve.
And I found when I got out and started offering myself, I had a lot of support. Needless to say, I cannot name all of the things that my Carter Temple family did for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just want them to know that I appreciate them, but there's no need for me to go and name all of the names.
Yeah.
The persons who helped me, who shared with me finances, who did flyers and videos, and it's just no need for me to go through that.
Yeah.
And the support that I received, even from bishops, about when they allowed me to come and to speak at their annual conferences, their winter meetings and spring meetings, the support that they gave and the favorable comments that they shared in terms of how they encouraged me along the way.
Right.
I cannot thank them enough for that. And even while we were campaigning, there were several of us campaigning at the same time.
Okay.
And I thank God that my campaigning allowed me to go over the church, to see the church, to meet many people and pastors. But it gave me an opportunity also to get very close to the persons with whom I was campaigning with, or who I was running.
Sure.
I'm cautious to say running against.
Right.
Because I never felt that we were running against anybody.
Okay.
We felt that we were just offering ourselves for the position.
For the position, right.
Therefore, when we would go places, and when Bishop Walker and Bishop Teresa Jefferson Snorton, Bishop Lockett, when they would get to a place before I got there, they would say, "Man, here is the card of the taxi driver. He was very nice to me.
Oh, wow.
You might want to use him." Or they would say, does Bishop so-and-so know that you're here yet? Go let him know that you're here. Or they would tell somebody that, that another candidate was here. Bishop Walker even had me preaching at his church. And of course, he came to preach at Carter.
Right.
So we never had this feeling of I got to pull you down in order for me to get there. But it was just a camaraderie and a fellowship and the love that I just grew to appreciate. But my road was great. And of course, sitting there on the day of.
On the day of. Tell us about the day of.
That was June 30th. I think that was the date. We just celebrated a couple of days ago our elections.
Okay.
Sitting there and waiting, Bishop James Walker had already come in, and then we decided to cast the ballot again. I think this was the evening session. I'm sitting there waiting. Bishop Lockett is sitting there waiting. And then the count goes forth, and there goes Bishop Lockett. And all of a sudden, the crowd goes up, and he's raised in the air and on his way to the stage. And then, of course, the count continued. And there I was sitting anxiously at my seat, Bishop Marvin Thomas, I think, sitting on one side of me, and he was encouraging me, and I got the image of the picture, but at any rate, sitting all around me were different people who were supporting and pulling for me. And then the count showed that Sylvester Williams had the number to be elected. Wow. And before you know it, by the time I remember standing up, and the next thing I know, I was in the air with one foot going one way and the other going another. But at any rate, it was a joy and to be elected. But after all is said and done, when I think about that day, it is so humbling.
Yeah.
It is so humbling.
Yes, sir.
That the church saw fit to elect me as one of their bishops, as the 58th bishop. And in the words, as I heard Bishop Reddick say, up until that time that I was elected, since 1870, I was number 58. And it was such an humbling experience. Mm-hmm. And it still is humbling to think that the church that I grew up in, the church that I love,
yes, sir,
thought enough of me,
mm-hmm,
a rural person from Sawyerville, Alabama, to have been elected. My father had already passed.
Okay.
My mom lived until September. But I remember thinking that they must prayerfully be proud of their son
Oh, I'm sure.
and how, but more importantly, deeply devoted and indebted to the church for having made it so.
Wow. Well, we're going to come back in just a moment and talk about your Episcopal assignments and then close out with your family. But I just want to share this.
That we are going through some stuff, but yet they can see us shouting and having a good time in the midst of it. That's then, brothers and sisters, we're saying, come on and try. I'm looking for some folk who can say, what is this? That makes me feel so good right now. What is this? Makes me want to run on anyhow. Whatever it is, it won't let me hold my peace. You know, it makes me love my enemies. And it makes me love my friends. It won't let me be ashamed to tell the world I've been born again. What is this that makes me smile when everybody know I ought to be frowning? What is this that makes me make them want to run on when everybody knows that I should be sitting down? What is this that makes me happy when they know I ought to be sad? But whatever it is, we won't let them hold my peace. And I want them to look at it after we finish shouting on Sunday. I want them to look at us and say, I sure want some of what they got.
That's the bishop of the 2nd Episcopal District at the time.
Is that right? Okay. All right.
What was your experience? That was your first Episcopal assignment, the 2nd, correct?
The 2nd was the first Episcopal assignment.
Tell us about your time in the 2nd, Bishop.
Well, it was a wonderful time. I enjoyed it. Of course, it was a learning curve for me to get to be able to share and to go to the 2nd, to be able to share with the persons in the 2nd. We were, of course, as you go anywhere, there were challenges to be met. And one of the things, and I say this because everybody knows this as a result of the general conference that succeeded my going there in 14, we had a wonderful time, but of course finances were an issue for us, and but trying to meet those challenges, it was, I guess, one of the greatest things that I had before us. As far as the churches, as far as the people, and as far as the ministries were concerned, they helped me a lot. They were very loving, they were very caring, and I just had an opportunity to do ministry, if you will.
Yes, sir.
From another level.
From another level.
They were very supportive, and many of those persons still stay in touch with me. You know, maybe I should say they stay in touch to give me their blessings, Bishop Thomas. It's not staying in touch with me to interfere with your leadership, but at any rate, when they see me, you know, they give me words of encouragement. And there's a love and a devotion, you know, that we have. So,
well, and because you made relationships there, and I can only imagine, Bishop, it has to be a daunting task to, you know, when you are appointed and assigned, you're elected, assigned, and then you're getting to know all of the people of the areas that you're going to serve. Every Sunday, I get you were visiting churches and just getting to know the preachers. That had to be daunting for you, was it? It was,
but a wonderful experience. I found myself as I tried to do here, especially prior to COVID. I tried to make sure that I made rounds to all of the churches in the area. And needless to say, that was quite time consuming and a lot of miles, but nevertheless, we were able to do it. And everywhere we went, people met us with open arms and just showed us nothing but love and appreciation. And for that, you know, I'm grateful. I'm indebted. It was there in the second that I really started seeing and developing even a greater appreciation for the depth of love that people show and have for their churches. It was in the second that I saw and I really wish I could call the name of the church. But Bishop Lakey writes about this church that is since closed, but he writes about it in his book, The History of the CME Church. But at this place, this church, there was a gentleman who was about 75 to 80 years old.
Okay.
Going every week to cut the grass on, and the church sat on an incline. That type of love and that type of devotion that allowed me to see and renewed my spirit for the fact of knowing that we have some of the most loving,
that's true,
and the most dedicated people in the church, in the CME church, most dedicated anywhere that is in the CME church.
Wow.
And I just have nothing but love and appreciation for the people of the second.
Now, you were in the second for 4 years?
I was in the second for 4 years.
Okay. Yeah. And then appointed to the third.
To the third.
And yeah. I can hear them saying 3D all across the world right now.
3D. You know, that's so interesting. I marvel at how that came about.
How did it come about?
I was trying to reach young people.
Okay.
And I was trying to just say something, thinking that they were going to chant it back to me.
Right.
And thinking that, you know, really that was going to be it. So at one of our annual conferences, I think I shouted 3D, and then others started shouting with me. Well, needless to say, it caught on. And now we are known as 3D. Hey, when you say it, now
talking about branding and marketing, that is impactful.
Yeah, that's right.
And effective. It is.
I was about to say, now you can't just say 3D. You got to say it with emphasis. 3D. 3D.
I love it. Man, oh Lord, and now all the 3Ds are making comments now. They want
right. How about that? Well, 3D knows that I love them, and I really appreciate them for all the work that they do.
Yes, I think they and now you've been there now since 2018.
I've been here since 2014.
2014. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
And what has that been like for you? I know it's been a tremendous experience for you.
It has been. It has been. And again, it continues to be a growing experience. It continues to allow me the opportunities to exercise gifts, but I'm also trying to make sure and that we identify and tap resources and people in the third who are able to continue the ministry. You're showing now, and thank you for showing that. You're showing now that CD that we made a few years ago. It is called Live in the D. We still have copies and would love for persons to support that ministry. Just let me know, and
let us know how we can get a copy, Bishop, and I'll be sure to share it on my page.
Very good. You got it. You got it coming. I'll make sure that you get it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure you get it. Anybody else who's wanting one, just email me or let me know. The Third Episcopal District website, just get on, let us know that you need one, leave your contact information, and we'll be more than happy to make sure that you get it. Our email address is third, THIRD _district HQS at AOL.com. Underscore district. Wait a minute, I missed something. Third _ district HQS headquarters. Third _ district HQS at AOL.com. The office number is 314-381-3111. Okay,
I'm gonna put that on the screen. Okay.
Thank you.
And repeat it one more time. Is that your website or your email address?
That was the email address. The web should be listed on Third District.
Okay. We'll get that up on the screen before we get out of here.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Got too much going on in my head to name all of that stuff right now.
That's all right.
Yeah. But yeah, we have some more CDs. We'll be honored and happy and thank God for everybody to help us to get them out. At the risk of sounding conceited, we think it's pretty good, and I'm very grateful for all of the persons that worked to make sure that that it was done. So
Well, I
anything more
cannot
than the
wait to
third?
hear that and to share. So, what are you all doing in the third, Bishop? You know, how your church is doing, and you know, what's your emphasis, your focus for your pastors and lay in the third?
Well, as far as our pastors are concerned, we're encouraging them to, be educated and stuff and go into school. We always feel that a call to preach and to ministry is a call to education. So we're trying to highlight that with our pastors. I am honored to say that we have quite a few persons with their doctorate degrees and seminary degrees, and others who are still going. So we're grateful about that as one of our emphasis. We're sharing with our pastors the need for continuous church growth and how we make that happen. How can we be creative, innovative in
Yes.
order to make our churches grow? And I dare say, how do we reach young people? Even at a time when we are going through COVID-19 as
Yes,
we are
sir.
now,
Yes.
we are seeing that even this has allowed us, or shall I say, pushed and catapulted us in new directions to develop new areas of ministry. I'm sure that's not just in the third, but I'm sure that's throughout our church and churches. But it is a joy to see how our churches and members and pastors have risen to the occasion to do ministry in new ways, whether that is Zoom, whether that is YouTube, Facebook, conference calls,
Mm,
even down to how we hold our meetings. Needless to say, you've heard us talk, and we are doing, as many other bishops are doing Zoom annual conferences. And of course, we had already been doing um, conference call and or Zoom winter meetings, and the previous year we did the spring meeting that way. So
okay.
we're doing things in new and innovative ways. So that continues to be our emphasis in terms of church growth. We are still encouraging financial stability.
Hmm.
And if you all recall, these are the things that I used as my campaign concerns.
Right.
Educating, train ministries, financial stability. How do we reach and teach and bring in young people? And of course, in the third, we believe in having a little bit of fun too.
Yes. Yes.
Because over the past we've sponsored, we've had two um, cruises,
Oh,
and
wow.
both of those cruises turned out to be very well. We started out on the first one with about 50 some people, 57 or so. Then I think on the next one we had right at 100. Of course, COVID slows us down now, but we'll have to see about doing it again. We are also trying to sponsor a trip to the Holy Land. We did it once before under the leadership of Dr. David Bryant, who is a tour guide for the Holy Land, certified. So that we went one time, and we're looking forward to having another trip where not only are our people and preachers able to uh, encourage, rather, to learn and to go to seminary, but also where possible to visit the Holy Land and get a greater feel for the scriptures and how the scriptures can come alive because they have seen what they actually preach about. So it has been a very rewarding experience, and the Lord continues to bless us.
That's great, Bishop. I made my first trip to the Holy Land in February,
All right, all
just
right.
before COVID hit, and there was talk about that. So we were slightly paranoid flying,
Yeah,
given, but it was a one life-changing trip, as you already know.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. There's nothing like seeing what you're preaching about.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So a
That's
couple more questions. We are in a new season, COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, all of these things are going on and impacting our churches and ministries and doing church differently. We're a couple of years out from the General Conference in Cincinnati, and we know that there are persons offering themselves for the episcopacy. What would you say is the need for the church? at this time, in your opinion, in terms of leadership, if you will?
Well, I think you've done a great job at sharing with us what the issues are.
Hmm.
Leadership now, I think, is going to demand that we think about ways and become involved so that we can address the needs that are before us. Allow me to share with you. You had mentioned earlier on about my attire. May
Yes.
may I just reflect and say, I dress this way intentionally. I shared this with you. I dress this way intentionally today because I was reminded of the movement during the civil rights struggle.
Yes, sir.
And in a class that I took about Dr. Martin Luther King, it shared with us that on some occasions they marched in
They
overalls,
sure did.
and a clergy shirt.
Yes, sir.
The overall symbol was symbolic of the fact that it is time to work. The clergy shirt was symbolic of the fact that the church had a responsible role to play. I think we are at that pivotal point again, at a time when leadership talks about white power, at a time when our young men, particularly, are being killed,
Yes, sir.
at a time when it seems as though many of the things that we have fought for are being reversed. We need not forget our heritage.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just because we have a few things to our credit,
Right,
we
right.
do not forget our heritage.
Yes, sir.
So for me, the attire, the dashiki, suggests who we are and our need to address the issues.
Hmm.
But the clergy shirt takes us back to what Martin Luther King and the others were doing, in the sense of saying that this is the time that the church can no longer be silent,
Yeah,
but that we have to address the needs.
we have to address the needs.
So it's out of that vein.
Yes, sir.
I don't need to share with anyone. It's out of that vein that when it comes around to the church's role in politics, we got to be involved. We talk about voter registrations. We talk about enhancing and education so that people will know what's going on in our communities. And if you allow me to say this, I think even though I'm not saying the Lord sent COVID,
Hmm. Hmm.
I do believe the Lord will allow us to use COVID.
Hmm.
Or COVID is working, if you will, to our good.
Oh, yes, sir.
And I say that because I was sharing with someone not too long ago. If it were not for COVID, we would still be working and going to our jobs. Therefore, we might not have been as educated because we don't listen. We would not have been able to hear what's going on the television sets.
That's right. That's right.
We would not, if we had to go to work, many people who were protesting and marching would not have been able to be out there marching.
So true. Yes, sir.
So that here it is that God uses it to, I think, some things to our good. And here it is that now we are meeting more people and sharing with more people via technology
Yes.
than we would have been sharing even in our, just having worship service at church alone.
Right.
So I think we have to see what's going on, and we have to be able and ready to address the issue. I think we still need to work to make sure that our clergy is trained and ready to go forward. We need visionaries who will be able to see the plight, if you will, of the people, the plight of the church, and still be able to go forward and to make some ministries that will address the needs. It's time out, I think, for us having ministries that nobody is supporting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no need for me to have a clothing ministry if everybody in my hood has clothes.
As closed. Yes, sir.
But just to say we have a ministry, we don't need that.
Right.
What is it that we can do for our communities that will make an impact and make a difference? We just got to be visionaries. And this is not about kinships and friendships. Our leaders need to be persons who will bring ministry first and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is our 150th year. You're optimistic about our future? The
I'm
church future.
I'm very optimistic about our future. Um, I'm very optimistic about our future. I think some people say, you know, things look glim, but and they are, and from where I sit, they're looking at a glass that's half empty.
Yes, sir.
But I say things look great because I'm looking at a glass that's half full.
Oh, yes.
And when I think about people like yourself and the ministry that you have us going through now, raising awareness, raising consciousness, getting us to understand and to know each other, I'm optimistic. When I look at the young people in the third district who are exercising their gifts,
Yes, sir.
who are going to seminary and learning and being trained to do ministry, when I see in our world our preachers and churches getting involved in Black Lives Matter,
Mhm.
when I see us as entrepreneurs and persons of means that are supporting the church, and persons who are visionaries who have insights to say this is where we need to go in order to help to have financial stability, yes, I am encouraged.
Yes.
I am encouraged. And I think the Lord has not brought us this far to leave us now.
My goodness.
I am encouraged.
Bishop, what has your family meant to you, your wife and
Yeah.
your children during this journey that you all have you've been on? And just as we prepare to close, just tell us about your family and what they've meant to you during this time.
My family has meant so much to me, from my parents to siblings, and now you're looking at my immediate biological family. The picture itself is a little bit older than needs to be, but that just goes to show it's time for me to take for us to take another family portrait.
Yeah.
They mean the world to me. If you were looking, there's two distinguished gentlemen on the back row. That's my son to the left, and my son-in-law to the right. Both of them are standing in front of their spouses, their wives. My son is married to Katia, and my daughter Samantha is married to Chris, who's the tallest gentleman. And of course, you see Sylvia there on the right, on the second, in the middle on the right. And Sylvia, husband, is not on that picture. She is married to Reverend Alfonso Bowie.
Okay.
And they have given us another grandchild that was born on Monday, I believe.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so we have another grandchild.
Well, now that makes sense that I tried to reach out to her and then get a response. She's taking care of a brand new baby. I didn't know that.
Don't you see? Yes, we have a brand new addition to the family.
Wonderful.
And that addition is Kaylee Elaine. So she was born weighing in at 7 pounds, 13 ounces. And okay, that's me being granddad.
Yeah.
Yes, that's me being granddad.
Just sharing a few pictures as we
that is Miss Layla. That is my son and his daughter.
Yeah.
Yes, that lady in the middle is so gorgeous. I'll have you to know that when I was pastoring here at the Murchison Tabernacle Church, her name is Mrs. Taylor, and she is 100 years old. Now tell me, I know you'll agree, she does not look that on that.
Not at all. I would have never known that, Bishop.
Yeah, she is a beautiful young lady.
My goodness.
And he wants to be just like his dad. He wants so much to be like me.
Bless his heart.
No, I'm carried on. And that, of course, is his family, my son.
That's a great goal and task to be, for sons to want to be like their dad. We could only pray. I pray my son want him to be himself, but I pray he wants to have a little of his dad, not much, but just a little.
There you go. Well, we want that. We want that. And of course, I wanted to be like my dad as well. But he's a fine son.
Yeah.
That is Mrs. Carmen Elaine, Lady Carmen.
Lady Carmen.
Lady Carmen.
Yeah.
And that is my mother-in-law, Lady Carmen's mom. That is Ms. Ellen Leonard.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
She has been a jewel. She is so intent on what she sets out to do,
Hmm.
I remember that she was coming to visit us, right? And they were coming from Mobile and were bringing things up to share with us. Dad told her that, Ellen, the car is full. We can't carry anything else. But she wanted to bring some Conecuh sausage. Folk in Alabama know what Conecuh sausage is. She wanted to bring us some Conecuh sausage. And her husband was saying, Dad was saying, Ellen, we got everything we need. We cannot carry anything else. She wrapped Conecuh sausage in some newspaper, put it in her purse, and brought the Conecuh sausage to us some 5 hours away, 4 or 5 hours away in her purse. She was very intent on doing that.
That is amazing. Well, Bishop, a couple of things, and then we're going to close. And I meant to share this earlier. You've had a chance to serve. How many times have you served as the chair of the College of Bishops?
I've served once.
Once. And was that an experience for you?
Indeed, indeed. An experience that I dare say I wasn't quite ready for. But it was a wonderful time. The college was very supportive and helped me in the process. It was a wonderful time, but quite an experience.
Quite an experience.
Quite an experience.
I tell you, Bishop Williams, I have so enjoyed spending this time with you. And this last picture, where there are two pictures, I just think this is just a wonderful picture of you and your wife, probably leaving some conference, some meeting, you know, and leaving and getting ready for the next one.
Yes.
Yeah. And this picture here, though, for me, I think is one of the most powerful pictures I've seen in our church. And I'm not sure whose head you all were laying hands on. I don't know whether this was during the last general conference, but it is just such power in that. And I appreciate you. I thank you. Any closing words? I'm going to close out with an excerpt from another sermon. But Bishop, any closing words on your behalf? You've been wonderful. Thank you very much, sir.
I want to thank you for this time of sharing and allowing me to share. I want you to know that it's been very meaningful for me, because sometimes if we're not careful, we find ourselves going through life and going through circumstances and not necessarily pausing long enough to think about the bridges, the people, and all of the things that have helped you to get where you are. So when you asked me to come and to be a part of this allowed me to reflect and to go back in my mind and to thank God for the journey, as well as to thank all of the people and to remember all of the people who made it possible. So I want to thank you for this time of sharing. I want to encourage you to continue to do this type thing, because it not only helps us individually, but it also gives an opportunity for the church at large to get to know us and to know who we are. May I take the opportunity to thank all who have poured into my life.
Yes,
I know that I've named and mentioned quite a few people on the call, and there are so many others that I have not, that time will not permit, but they know who they are, and I just want them to know how appreciative I am of them. Thanks again to my wife and family. May I thank Bishop Stewart. I want to thank my 3D family, elder pastors, conference officers, members. I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Renova Chan, who serves with me as administrative assistant, and she keeps things going, particularly as it relates to the office and my schedule. And I want to give a shout out to all of the churches that I've pastored and who have laid their hands on me and helped to make me who I am. But I also, in the process, want to especially give a shout out to my home church, because there were folks at Vast Tabernacle who shared with me that they were watching today. Again, to all of the bishops, Bishop Stewart, God bless you all. Thank you so much. And
well, I tell you, God bless you and your journey from Hale County, Alabama, to the College of Bishops for the CME Church. We thank God for you. And we're going to close out now and with excerpts from a sermon that you preached. And please give your wife my regards and tell her thank you for allowing me to pull some pictures off of her Facebook.
I'll tell her.
Off of her Facebook page. Brothers and sisters, God bless you. Hope to see you Tuesday for the family of Bishop Helton. But here now, as we close out the words of our distinguished bishop, the 58th bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, Bishop Sylvester Williams, Sr.
Go to church anticipating being blessed. Y'all gonna talk to me? Or do you just go for a season just acting out and just saying, I'm going out of a formality? I wonder sometimes if we are already discouraged. And that's why we go as we are and leave like we went. I wonder if we have that attitude already that we don't expect anything and that we are already discouraged. But if you'll allow me to fast forward, if the folk who ought to be encouraged are already discouraged, then how do we think we're going to encourage somebody else who needs a word from the Lord? But may I go ahead and share with you that even if you don't want to admit it, all of us probably at some point in our lives feel a little bit down and out. All of us from time to time feel discouraged. If I may say that that's you, you don't have to be ashamed to own it because you are in good company. I remember on one occasion that Elijah got so discouraged. Elijah sat down by a juniper tree and said, Lord, I've had enough. Take away my life. If that's not enough, do you remember Jeremiah? I wish y'all would pray with me for a minute. Jeremiah said, I'm going to close up my Bible. I'm going to hang up my robe. I'm not going to say anything else about the Lord, but something happened. Jeremiah said, but I felt a fire.
Thank you, Bishop. God bless you and have a great evening.
Thank you. You as well. God bless you. Thank you.
All right.